hello, Steve.
Hello, Paul. Welcome to the Chinwag.
Hello, Dr. Stephen Asma. Welcome to the Chinwag. Here we are.
Yes.
Once again.
With a very interesting topic.
Eye to eye, toe to toe. Yes, with a very interesting. Very interesting. We have been encouraging letters. We've been encouraging you folks to reach out and make contact, and you've been doing it.
Yeah, we
actually have a really tremendous letter from a listener today that we want to get into. It's really good.
Yeah,
it's kind of it's like sweet spot Chinwag.
Sometimes Paul and I will say like, hey, wouldn't it be great if we did a show on this? And then like a listener will like write in and be like on the topic or on a very similar topic. Yeah. It's really fun.
Yeah, yeah. And this was something. It's right. It really hit us because it involves lake monsters. What are known as lake monsters.
A special fear of mine, special phobia.
Yeah, right. Yeah. What's the deal with that? Why are you so afraid, Steve?
I don't like deep water, murky water. I think
the water stuff is troubling to you.
Particularly phobic on that.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. And just deep water, ocean. You're not going to go in the ocean. You're not going to go in. I'll tell you something. No, go ahead.
Well, I have been in the ocean. I did almost drown there, but that was when I was an adult, and I was just.
Okay.
I think it's an evolved fear about, I'm afraid of creatures that are in there and I can't see what the fuck is coming up on me. And is that a fish or is that a kraken? I don't know.
Yeah, I gotcha. I'll tell you an interesting thing. I actually find lakes, ponds, things like that more troubling than the ocean.
Me too.
I'm like the ocean I'm okay with, but a lake and a pond, I'm a little bit like.
The stillness.
Yeah, the stillness, the water's real dark. You can touch the button and you're like, what was that? Like slimy shit. And it's like for some reason, and oftentimes you go to those places, they're oftentimes, the ones I've been in, there's not a lot of people around.
Oh, yeah.
They're like really, and I'm kind of like, okay. And if for some reason, I don't know why, the water is dark. It's like,
there's a lake Lake
cold.
Winnebago in Wisconsin is like the biggest lake, I think, in Wisconsin. It's very shallow, and yet there are some of the most gigantic, terrifying sturgeon fish in there that are just, they're like friggin' 10 feet long.
Huge.
And shit. Yeah.
Those things are gigantic. Oh, God. Now I don't want to go in a lake or a pond or anything. Before we get to this fantastic letter, though, as a reminder, as always, journey over to Apple Podcasts.
And
to
rank and review us, please.
Rank and review.
Give us those 5 stars if you would.
Give us those 5 stars, please. Please. We could use them.
Yeah.
At any time of the day or night, we love them.
And send letters and comments. It's really fun.
Letters, comments, please. Please. And you can see us on the YouTube as well.
With some
you can
great
listen
animations.
To us on the YouTube with some great animations from Mr. Alex Sokol.
Yes, indeed.
The Blue Man himself,
really
Mr. Alex Sokol.
Incredible animation.
Incredible stuff. But without further ado, Steve, shall we just split right to this?
Let's do it.
To this amazing letter. I'll read it.
Would you?
It's from, it's from a listener named David. And here it goes. Hi. Firstly, I want to say I love your podcast so much. Very nice. In addition to being David. Some of the greatest roles and some of my favorite things ever, John Adams, Private Parts, this podcast I find interesting, insightful, and educational. That's very nice of you. Thank you, sir. I heard you mention, and you had an obsession with the Loch Ness Monster. We both do.
Yeah, totally.
Steve, right? And I wanted to suggest an episode about my local monster and the United States version of Scotland's cryptid Champ. I am from Burlington, Vermont, and Champ the Lake Monster is a cultural staple of my town, dating back to the sightings from the Abenaki tribe and even Samuel D. Champlain himself, after whom the lake is named, I believe. The history of Champ is rich in details that extends to the modern day. As crazy as it sounds, me and 2 friends actually had an experience of seeing Champ in Shelburne Bay a few years ago. While it wasn't as clear a view as the famous Mansi photo, I don't know what the famous Mansi photo. I know. I'm excited to know more about this.
The Mansi photo.
While it wasn't as clear a view as the famous Mansi photo, what we saw seemed to be a large serpent in the middle of the bay with humps that was creating a wake. I took a video of it, but shooting in long range on my 2015 iPhone doesn't make for a great shot. Here's the strangest part. I was going for a walk in that same place years later with my mom and family friends when one of them, this guy is literally one of the top lawyers in Vermont, and his mom used to be the governor.
There's credibility.
So
He's establishing credibility.
He is not wacky at all. He is establishing. So these people are not wacky at all. They told a Champ sighting story that was completely identical to mine. Now, here's a theory to explain this that I know you'll have fun with. The current assumption of what these cryptids are, in both the case of Champ and the Loch Ness Monster, is that they're either a sole immortal beast that's been around since the dinosaurs, or there's a small family or clan of these cryptids that have been reproducing since the age of the dinosaurs, but they've managed to mostly stay hidden in the dark depths of Lake Champlain and Loch Ness.
Okay.
However, and I know this is a stretch, says David, but a theory I heard, enjoy, and may even agree with is that we are not seeing an immortal or hidden beast, but something much more interesting. We're looking at a ghost of a beast.
Weird.
Now, to play the thought experiment, if you have to buy into the idea that these monsters exist, it seems much more plausible to me that we are seeing a ghost versus an immortal animal or a tribe of hidden dinosaurs. There's no evidence at all of animals being immortal or of dinosaurs still existing today. However, ghost experiences in many parts of the world are so common, they're accepted as fact. Interesting reasoning.
Very.
Just a theory I know you'll have fun with. I would also suggest looking at the geographical similarities of Loch Ness and Lake Champlain, and I implore you to draw your own conclusions from this, quote, coincidence, unquote. Keep up the great work, and I can't wait to continue listening to the podcast. Thanks, David.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
That's a good letter, David.
It's a really good one.
Gets
It's
the
an amazing
show. He
one.
understands the show.
Yes, yes. But the first point I want to take issue with is that lawyers and former governors of Vermont can't be wackos.
Yeah, let's just argue that.
I take
point.
issue with that. Let's just argue. We could argue that probably for days. But you know, it's. I wouldn't say it's a shaky premise, David, but it's definitely one we can
you
debate.
did yourself no
But I hear
favors
you.
with that.
No, but I hear you. I hear you. I like the establishment of credibility very much.
Yeah, if it's the town
This is
drunk,
all-
then clearly that's not going to be a crucial
Which
corroboration.
could be a lawyer or
Yes,
governor,
that's
which could be the lawyer or former governor. Not to impugn any of these people. Good thing we don't know their names. It's interesting. I do want to say that I've never been. I don't think I've ever been to Lake Champlain, but I have heard of Champ.
I've
I
heard
know
of Champ, but I've never
heard
been
of
there
Champ.
either. That's fascinating.
No, but I do know that the local minor league baseball team is called the Lake Monsters, I think.
Do they
as
have
far
like
as
a
I
picture
know.
of like a sort of a Loch Ness creature?
They have a really
sort
great
of?
like cartoon,
cartoon?
like they have a really great cartoon.
It's hilarious.
Sea serpent on their
Is there a
hats, if they still
tourism
exist.
industry based around Champ? That would be interesting because I bet there is.
I'm sure there
there's
is.
like a
Yeah, I
pizza
bet there
place,
is.
and you know,
No, it's a pretty. That's right. It's exactly right. I bet there is, and why not?
there's a burger
why
place.
not?
Like, come eat the monster.
exactly.
That's the special
Totally.
or whatever. Yeah.
All kinds of like souvenir shops and stuff like that. Why not? And it's a famous one. I mean, it's definitely, he's a famous
Champ is
American, he or she or
Cryptid.
whatever
A cryptid.
is a famous cryptid. So you had these amazing, you know of two encounters, but I love this idea. I mean, first of all, the idea that there's three ideas that he proposes.
Yeah.
First of all, that it's
Single creature that's
a
lasted.
single creature that is immortal.
That's the one I'm going to rule out very quickly. I
I'm
think.
immediately going to
Okay.
rule out because it's like we know that nothing is immortal, sadly.
Although there, you know, that
baby.
shark that's been alive for 500 years. That's fucking crazy.
Well, that's the Greenland shark
Yeah.
you're talking about,
So
I think,
cool.
which apparently gets to be up to like 500, 600 years
Amazing.
old. And I'm like, are there a lot of those things? I mean, they're like, do they reproduce like gangbusters?
I don't think there's a
Or are there
lot of
only
them.
a couple
I think
of
there's
those things?
probably a few, but I don't know for sure. I mean,
I just find that so crazy.
That's a long lifespan.
500 years old. Isn't that crazy?
but obviously the
and
time
there's that
scale
weird,
from ancient, like, you know, prehistory is
To
totally
immortal.
different. Yeah, it's.
But also, I'd like to point out there's the crazy, and I don't know much about this, as I don't know much about anything that I talk about on here. But
let that
there's the crazy immortal, there's the crazy immortal jellyfish. Have you heard about this jellyfish that sort of
Doesn't it like
gets to a
break
certain
off
point and it's like
yeah.
something, and then it sort of seems to regenerate or something. It seems to de-age or something.
And there's trees,
and
there's
they're
trees
not
like this.
immortal.
There's
Oh, really?
trees like this that are like thousands of years old, and there's a root system that connects them as they emerge out. But the actual root system goes way, way back. but still nothing goes back millions of years.
Immortal.
Yeah.
Nothing is immortal as far as we know. So yes, we're going to rule that out. The other one is that there's been a group of these things have survived.
Now I like
and,
this
and are reproducing. Do you? Is this the one you feature the most?
I like this more than the ghost theory that he proposes. I think this one makes sense from the point of view of biology. Still a stretch, but imagine if you had like a interbreeding population. Let's say you had 20 or 30 of these things, and they were also moving around. Maybe with Loch Ness. With the loch, there's some discussion about maybe connecting to bigger to the sea.
That's right.
So if you had a small group of these that could interbreed and stay alive for millions of years, then they would just be like they would be like the giant squid that we thought maybe that lives, maybe that's alive, maybe it isn't, and then we saw it and corroborated. So I feel. Do
you ever see? It's interesting, but it only occurs to me now. I mean, I know that there's like sightings of groups of Sasquatches or Bigfoots. Yeah. Are there group sightings of sea serpents, though? I feel like you always see one.
It's a good point.
You don't see like a family of sea serpents.
That's a good point. I'm
just wondering.
Because, if it was a population, that increases the likelihood of seeing them as individuals and as groups. So it's weird.
Right.
Yeah, that
wouldn't unlikely. You see like a mother, like you see a whale with you see a mother whale and its calf and stuff like that. Would you maybe not be seeing, but I don't feel like I don't feel like you see there's a lot of sightings of multiple sea serpents. They seem to be loners.
When I was at Loch Ness, the guy was saying, we were on the lake, and of course I'm looking for Nessie, and the guy who was running the tour was saying, well, of course they swept the lake with, some radar or other.
Sonar.
Yeah, sonar. And he was saying, well, there could be caves way down deep, and they are living in the caves, and that's why we don't see them. And so that was the explanation for not seeing them.
But no, neither one of those theories does David buy. David is proposing that these are ghosts.
It's fun.
I love the idea of Ghost of Loch Ness.
Ghost of Loch Ness.
It's a great title.
Monsters.
The Ghost of Sasquatch. It's like that these monsters, and I'm gonna extend it out, David, and say like maybe all these things are
other
ghosts.
cryptids.
Maybe
other cryptids.
Yes, all these other things are ghosts. Mothman and Bigfoot, and maybe even the UFOs. Maybe all these things are ghosts, or no, I guess not UFOs. That doesn't make sense. But
he makes this argument that. Like more people believe in ghosts, and so ghosts are more believable, because we've talked before that in Japan, ghost belief is very strong. In Vietnam, ghost belief is really strong.
Sure, well, all over the world,
But I don't think that the fact that larger numbers of people,
reason.
I don't think that's a good enough reason. Myself, I'm sort of down on the ghost thesis.
That it's left some sort of trace in the world. Yeah. I mean, I love it. I think it's a really awesome idea. I really, really like the idea. I have another theory, Steve.
Oh, let's hear your fourth option.
I'm going to take a step beyond David. And by the way, as I say, I really do love the idea that it's the ghost of the chupacabra, or it's the ghost of like
Bigfoot.
It's cool. I love it. It's really like. Yeah, and yet these things are leaving some physical trace behind sometimes too, which maybe ghosts don't do, which maybe is an argument against them being ghosts. But I'm going to propose another
Let's hear it.
scenario. And this is going back to something we've talked about a lot, which is this kind of time fold thing, and it relates to sort of psychic events. There are people who say about these things that they're interdimensional creatures. That you've heard this, that there's kind of like, that they're sort of interdimensional, and they're sort of, it's kind of, things, overlapping.
So it's from another universe, and it's flitting into ours momentarily,
into our universe,
and then zipping out.
I'm gonna take this to an even more.
You could go even weirder than that.
I'm gonna go somewhere even weirder that I like about this, and I've thought about this before, and that is that. Like the psychic events we've talked about, the clairvoyant events, there's a fold in time, and what we're seeing, Steve, is a species that does not yet exist.
From the future?
That we're seeing from something from the future.
Holy
Steve.
shit.
That the Sasquatch is actually something that perhaps after the nuclear apocalypse, or after the in a world in which man maybe doesn't even exist, in a world in which man has been eliminated by his own hand,
way in the future.
Perhaps we're seeing something that does not yet exist,
like that H.G. Wells shit where he goes so far in the future and there's no humans.
He's literally traveling to the future. He's and he sees those weird sea creatures.
Now.
And he sees but we're having that time glitch thing, that we're being afforded this glimpse. Did you see what I just did there? The way I kind of like blinked my eyes.
The listener
Isn't that incredible? I wish we had that on film.
That was amazing.
How was that for really hammy acting?
I don't know how to describe that.
Wow. No, that was incredible, wasn't it? Wow. I'm amazed by my own hammy acting. Home. Wow. That was a whole gesture I just did with glimpse that I wish everybody, America needs to see. The next motion picture I'm in, the next major motion picture I'm in, I'm going to do that in there. But what we're being afforded is a glimpse of something that has yet to manifest in the world, that it's a future species.
Now, I don't know how to rule that out, but I don't know how to rule it in either. You know what I'm saying?
See? Okay. Oh, all right. That's a good answer. I like that.
Let me pull the Occam's razor move on you here. Now, in logic, there's this term.
Which is Occam's razor.
Yes.
Yeah, what is that?
Occam's razor. There was a guy named William of Occam, sort of late medieval thinker, and he said, look, when you've got two competing theories, one is, let's say, that there's a group of interbreeding sea creatures in Lake Champlain, and the other is that they are from the future time jumpers.
Why are you laughing, Steve?
Ghostly time jumpers from the future.
Why is that making you laugh? I don't understand why that's funny.
I wouldn't presume to laugh on this, but Occam would say that the one basically like is simpler than the other, which is the interbreeding population, because we know what animals are and we know how interbreeding happens, and some can live a long time. That doesn't require like a leap of mind, like people from the future traveling back through, or like a creature from the future traveling back through time. So he thought that if you had these competing theories and one was metaphysically simpler, like you didn't have to posit the existence of another realm, then he said you should prefer the one that's simpler. Now, that doesn't make it right, but that rule has sort of dominated in science. It's great. I love Occam's razor. Is that not, isn't that basically Sherlock Holmes's method too? I think so.
Doesn't Sherlock Holmes advocate for eliminate the impossible, and what you're left with is what you're left with must be the explanation.
But that's not what Conan Doyle was driven by, as you and I have talked about before. He was not himself an Occam's razor guy. But I think he probably would have said, there's no other plausible explanation for fairies, so they must be fairies. I mean, I think he would have actually probably applied Occam's razor at its kind of most extreme point. I guess photographs were much more compelling back then, too. I mean, there's what do you want to believe, but then a photograph.
Well, then that's because, and that the reference to that you're making is that Conan Doyle, there were these girls, young girls, who claimed to see fairies, and then they claimed that their father or somebody took photographs of them, of these fairies in the Cottingley Forest or something. I think so. These photographs became a sensation,
and Conan Doyle was very impressed.
Believed them, and they were these girls sitting, and they were these in the foregrounds of these photos would be these little Tinkerbell fairies with like wings and little pointy shoes and stuff like that, and they were very much the kind of classic idea, Victorian era idea of a fairy. A kind of Edwardian idea of a fairy. And they clearly, to our eye now, look like cutouts. Totally. They look like little paper cutouts or something. They're in black and white, and obviously the pictures are in black and white. But they were a sensation, and Conan Doyle really threw his weight behind these things.
He did. He thought that he wasn't that interested in fairies per se, but he was very much interested in the spirit realm, and he thought that anything that was compelling and paranormal could tilt us towards a greater belief in the spirit realm. I think that was his angle, wasn't it?
I guess so. Yeah. Anything that could maybe affirm a non-material, some kind of.
But an Occam's razor would just say, well, you could fake a photo, but then it was the beginning of photography.
That's what's really interesting. What you just said is that photographs were such a new thing, and must have been stunning in the idea that, well, what you're seeing is real. Like, wow, I just took a picture of this couple sitting there in front of me, and now there they are, and I can literally see them in this really realistic depiction of them. So how could this be fake? I guess, is the idea, because the technology was fucking with their heads,
Yeah.
Steve.
And we're at a place
the same way
where that's happening
the
again.
same way.
You know?
No, that's interesting. And that's really interesting. The inability, that's interesting, Steve. The inability to discern what was real or not.
Yeah.
Because of that technology, and now we're at the same place.
Yeah, because of AI and images and films of people that look totally convincing, but they're not.
Totally.
Yeah.
And my first thought so often now when I see things is this real?
Yeah.
Is that a real picture of so-and-so, beating up a shark on the beach or something? Like, that can't be real. It's like, and so that's really interesting.
But there was a history of hucksterism. I mean, the 19th century is a great, you've got your P.T. Barnum, you've got these guys in England were doing these hoax taxidermy mounts and stuff. And then the Loch Ness, that famous photos from the 30s, and they didn't confess that it was a hoax until the 90s. They were like, yeah, we were fucking around. And that was
a deathbed. There's the famous picture of the Loch Ness Monster, like the neck, the beautiful photograph of the neck sticking up. Right? It's iconic. And I think the guy took it in the 30s. He was a if memory serves, Steve, he was a surgeon.
Was he?
I think, who took the picture. So I think he was seen as a kind of
or a governor.
No, not a lawyer or a governor, neither a lawyer nor a governor, but a surgeon. And I think that therefore, I think he was seen as probably reliable, because what surgeon is going to be like?
Yeah. But those are the guys that you can't trust them. They're fucking around.
Surgeons are weird. Surgeons are weird people. But I would say what's interesting is that, it was a deathbed confession that in fact it was this kind of flotation device with a head attached to it. And it was heartbreakingly, it was all a fake.
And the girl, one of the sisters confessed about the fairy photographs, I think. After the other sister died, she finally came clean.
I think that's right. She came clean about it. Oh, heartbreaking. I think there's a movie.
Is there?
I think actually there's a movie. Yeah, I believe there's a movie about it.
What about if Champlain is just something else, like you're seeing another kind of animal, like Champ is maybe like people have seen seals and said that's something.
That's the explanation for a lot of like Loch Ness and stuff. I think people haven't people actually suggested a sturgeon, like a gigantic sturgeon or something?
I would find that very believable, because sturgeons
like a big old they get fucking
Yeah.
huge, and it's like, or an eel, or it's like some kind of salmon or something, like a freakishly big one of these.
They did test the water in Loch Ness. They should do this in Champlain, and there is all kinds of eel DNA in the water, in all the water samples. And so some people are saying there could be some giant eels in there, it's horrifying.
Is that just a lot of eel poop? Is there just a lot of eel spooge? Is that what you're saying? When you say eel DNA,
I don't want to. I don't want to speculate beyond the evidence, man. I just want to stay with the evidence.
All those eels in there. Just eels freak me out. Those kinds of
that's horrifying enough. Yeah. Just eels.
Eels, snakes. Do snakes bother you? Are you bothered by snakes?
Snakes don't trouble me as much as spiders and deep water. Snakes, I'm okay with snakes. They don't creep me out.
I don't know. I think things that lack legs freak me out a little bit. It's like worms and snakes and eels.
Is it the movement, the undulating kind of?
It might be the movement. It might just be the sort of. Here's an interesting thing. I have a friend. I have a friend who's freaked out by birds. He's freaked out by birds. And
that's a weird phobia.
Because you're just saying it is a weird one. I mean, I don't think he's phobic, but he just doesn't love birds. And I said to him one time, what's the problem with birds? And he said, they have no arms. And I said, they have wings. He said, those aren't arms. And now, ever since he said that, I've never been able to look at a fucking bird. And again, the same way. I'm just like, they don't have any fucking arms. They're like these weird, these like fat pigeons are just like, just tottering around on these skinny, weird little legs with no arms.
They're dinosaurs.
No
they're the descendants of the great dinosaurs that ruled the earth.
But dinosaurs had 4 legs, and dinosaurs had
look
even
at
the Tyrannosaurus had the little, but it had the little well, I guess you're right. The legs were disappearing, weren't they? Because it didn't really need them, because its jaws were good enough. Is that the idea? Or do we even really know that that's what a T-Rex was like? I mean, is that still they just had the little rudimentary arms?
I think they know that because the bones reveal the size of the actual appendages. They don't know what the color of it was. Did it have feathers? You know, they're even questioning is it cold-blooded or warm-blooded. There's a lot of debate.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's some debate about that too. Yeah, it's cool.
The whole bird thing, dinosaur bird thing, still blows my mind.
It's amazing.
And there's a part of me that aesthetically gets a little bit offended by the feathered thing when I see it. Aesthetically, I'm a little bit like, yeah, what are you doing to my dinosaurs? What are you doing to like the classic dinosaur thing? Like, really? Feathers? It's like, oh no, and they were striped.
Pigeons,
they're like candy striped. Yeah, they're candy striped and they're like crazy modeled like camouflage. I mean, that's cool.
But that's not like, the dinosaurs of our youth where they were just
that's
badasses.
Not the classic. Yeah, just big green dinosaurs just stomping around, destroying everything.
I'm with you on this. I prefer the just.
Yeah, I find it kind of weird. But I still find that hard to believe. But once you know that too, then when you sort of see a seagull like up close and it's got that kind of beady little eye all embedded in that scaly fucking skin around its eye. Yeah, that kind of, and it's all kind of flicking around and it's very lizard-like.
It is.
And you're like, oh, how strange.
Yeah.
How weirdly strange. But anyway, my friend of mine was like, they don't have any arms. And just think about that when you look at a bird next, especially when you look at a fucking pigeon walking around. Here's another thing I'm going to tell you about pigeons and birds.
Here we go.
Do you know why? Do you know why they bob? Do you know why they're bobbing their heads?
Why, man?
Pigeons and chickens, I think too, because their eyes are so poor. Their eyesight is so poor that they can't focus their eyes. So they're constantly refocusing their eyes.
Really?
Right now, our listeners can't see that I'm actually doing this
Paul
incredible.
Is doing a great impression of a chicken.
I'm doing an incredible simulation of a chicken or of a pigeon. If you could only see what I'm doing right now, folks, you'd pay top
it's
dollar
career
to see
ending,
it.
really. It's
no, it's career. I think it's career. I think it's the next step in my career. You'd pay top dollar to watch me doing my chicken impersonation, but it's because they can't. Their eyes are constantly needing to be refocused. Not an amazing piece of trivia.
There's animals like chickens, domesticated birds, and domesticated dogs have all kinds of problems with their perception, like their eyes, their nose, their breathing, because human beings have distorted their biology because we've been selecting for some animal that'll just pop out all these eggs that we want. Meanwhile, we don't know we're also fucking up their eyesight. Same thing with dogs, cats, like we've messed up their biology.
And that's just domesticated. That's inbreeding.
That's domestication, and inbreeding,
And that's like a Dalmatian is just like just all like its hips come flying out of its sockets all the time because they're just completely
they're just train wreck of
oh my
animal.
God! So that's terrible. So is it? The pure breeds are more like that. It's like your basic mutt
it's
having
better,
that much
I think
trouble?
It's better to be a mutt because you've got much more genetic diversity and variation within your own gene line, and that helps you. That means you've been able to. You're more adaptable, and the healthy stuff has remained and hasn't been edited out through very intense human selection. Because Darwin said the only real monsters there are the ones that we have made in our domestic animals, like especially dogs.
Interesting. Right.
Some of them can't even breathe. It's a mess.
No, it's true. You got the bulldog that can't breathe and all those things that are just in their teeth are all, and you breed it in for these characteristics because they're cute. They have the prognathic jaw. Yeah. I'm going to use that word. You have the underslung jaw, right? That's pretty good, right? Prognathic jaw, which means the underbite. Like the line of the Habsburg, the royal families, the kings of the royal family of Spain. One of the characteristics of the royal family of Spain in the kind of golden age of the Spanish Empire, the Philips and all these guys. One of the genetic signs they had was a prognathic.
Is that
jaw.
right? I didn't know that.
They had an underslung jaw.
I did not know that. Yeah,
incredible.
That's a common problem with inbreeded populations, and the royals.
Yes, it is a prognathic jaw.
Well, look at the current royal family. I'll just leave it there.
Are there a lot of the current royal family in England?
Yes.
I don't think there's not a prognathic jaw to be seen.
No, but other maladies that are under the skin.
You think so?
Yeah.
Really?
We don't even know.
I don't know. They all seem to be pretty.
Yeah, the Queen did live a long time, but who knows?
Yeah, they live forever, those people. It's crazy how long they live.
What about this?
What are they doing?
It's true. God, she is the longest living royal. right?
Ever.
I think
the
guy,
in
the king of
England for
Thailand
sure,
was
but like,
making a run on it, but didn't make it, I think, as far as
didn't
she
make
did,
it.
yeah.
You think she had him bumped off?
You
think she had him? You think she had him aced? You think she just like? You think she had him aced? Iced. I meant to say. You think she had him iced? Yeah, totally. Send in the SAS to just like totally. Why not? This has been fascinating. Look at where we went off of this amazing letter from David. And David, this was a fantastic letter.
Thank
we
you,
actually
David.
got a little chat in about lake monsters, and I'm gonna go with my future Sasquatch, future champ theory. Okay, thanks, Steve. I'll take that. Thanks, Steve. I guess you're washing your hands of that, aren't you?
No, you can.
I'm going to take that. All right, I'm going to take that theory and start to really work on it. But what a great! I love the idea of ghosts of these creatures.
Yeah, it would be great to have if any of our
idea.
listeners want to take Paul's theory and just like push it, just work on it, develop it further and send that in.
That'd be
fun.
nice.
Yeah,
that would be really
cool.
fun. Now people are
research.
going to jump all over. Rip me apart, do the research. Don't even start with me with do the research. Don't even go there. Do your own research, oh brother. All righty. Listen, this has been great, Steve.
Yeah, very fun.
Very fun. Please, as always, journey over to
Apple Podcasts,
etc. Give us some.
Head over to YouTube and look at the animations, but also definitely good.
Indeed.
Give us reviews and ratings and write to us. It's really great to read.
Indeed. Many thanks, Steve, for joining me once again
you,
here
Paul.
on the Chinwag. Thank you. And thanks to David for the letter.
Yes.
Keep them coming. All right. And Chinwag out.
Over and out. Chinwag is a production of Treefort Media and Touchy Feely Films. Hosted and executive produced by Paul Giamatti and Stephen Asma. Executive producers for Treefort are Kelly Garner and Lisa Ammerman. Dan Carey is executive producer for Touchy Feely. Our series producer is Rachel Whitley Bernstein. Our associate producer is Andrew Miller. Original theme music by Luke Top, with additional music by Via Mardot. Oscar Guido is our executive in charge of production. Tom Monahan is head of audio for Treefort. Animation created by Alex Sokol. Audio production, supervision, and editing by Maxwell Carney. Additional audio assistance and mixing by Jeff Neal. With additional production management from Renee Levesque. Clara Wong is Celestial Empress of Benevolent Knowledge. Lastly, for more information, go to chinwagpod.fm and find us on Instagram or TikTok at chinwagpod or on Twitter at chinwag_pod.